Name for me?
Yeah, my name is Jerome Harold Black, but I'm known as Jerry.
Okay. Where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York on November 24th, 1921. Long time ago.
Yeah, very precise. I like that. Uh, what were you doing before the war?
Before the war, well, I was at LSU. I was a student, uh, and I started LSU in September of 1939 and was here for 4 years, graduated in 1943 and went into the service right from here.
Okay. Were you single or married?
At the time, well, I think I was almost married because I met my wife when we were both freshmen at LSU. So for 4 years, she was my steady girlfriend. So I tell her that even though we were married 63 years before she passed away,
Oh, wow.
and I said, a lot of people think we were just married 63 years, but we were really married 67 years because I knew her 4 years here at LSU. Not intimately, but I knew her.
I think you have a record there, 67. When and where were you when you found out about Pearl Harbor?
That's interesting. We had a very good friend at LSU, a girl that was a friend of my wife's, whose parents lived in Baton Rouge, and they had invited us to have Sunday brunch with them at their house. So we had gone there for brunch, and my wife's girlfriend had invited, and at that time they had lots of soldiers in the area because the war was on, and we had a lot of camps throughout Louisiana, army camps, and she had met a soldier that she'd gotten to know and like, so she had invited him for lunch. So the four of us had lunch or brunch at her mother's house and went to the movies. And we came out of the movies, there was a young kid selling newspapers, special extra Pearl Harbor bomb. So the first time we knew about Pearl Harbor was when we walked out of that movie, and they announced that Pearl Harbor had just been bombed.
I can imagine the chaos. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
Pardon?
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
No, actually, I was a graduate of ROTC.
Okay.
So I spent 4 years in ROTC, and I was when I graduated ROTC, I was commissioned second lieutenant.
Okay.
And went into the service.
That's a very good program still with us today.
Well, I strictly approve of ROTC.
I did it, and it was the best thing I could have ever done. What was your branch of service?
Well, it's interesting. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in field artillery in the Army. The only problem was after I got into the service and I was shipped overseas, they noticed a problem I had with my eyes. You probably see it too. If I'm looking at you with this eye, I'm looking at him with the other eye. I don't have binocular vision.
Oh.
They didn't know that, I didn't know that. So when they became aware of that, they said, well, you're not going to go into any combat. So when I was shipped overseas, my first assignment was with Allied Force Headquarters in Italy.
Oh.
And because I had a record of being active in dramatics, I'd been in plays while I was in high school and so forth. They said, we got just a job for you. So I was sent to special service section there, who handled all the USO performers that came over to put on shows for the soldiers, entertain them.
Uh-huh.
So I became an officer in charge of the USO units. And when they bring over a show from Broadway or some movie stars from Hollywood, I would be the officer to take them around while they did their shows.
That's the job I'd be
And
interested.
that was a pretty good job. In fact, a lot of people wanted to trade.
I'm sure.
So I got to do a pretty good job from the standpoint of people that I had to work with, like Sinatra
Wow.
and Bob Hope.
How was it working with Sinatra?
Interesting.
Was he anything like you see on television?
Yeah, there were lots of times when he was a really nice guy. We had some fun, but he could be very demanding.
I'm sure.
And not too understanding at times. But somehow we worked our way through that. And I was with Bob Hope, and I was with another movie star that had started a radio program years before called Duffy's Tavern, and it became very popular. Then he went into the movies, and then on television, and he brought his show over to Italy, and I traveled with him as the officer in charge. So I had a pretty big spread of.
Had your work cut out for you.
And it was a good job. In fact, I even had a general that I was talking with one day. Actually, we had a lot of generals in that area because our headquarters, Allied Force headquarters, was stationed in a palace, King's Palace, in a little town called Caserta, Italy. And Caserta was about 13 kilometers outside of Naples. And we had taken over, when we captured Italy, we had taken over everything. So we also took over the King's Palace. So that became our headquarters. And so for a year and a half, maybe, yeah, close to 2 years, I guess, I lived in a palace, 1,600 room palace.
I don't think I would have left. That's a good place to live.
That's where we had our offices. We had our mess halls where we ate, and we had apartments there, and I had an apartment there for 2 years almost.
Everything you needed under one roof.
Under one roof, in a big palace. So that's when I started telling you about this general. They had a lot of generals there because it was the high headquarters of the Mediterranean Theater of Operation. And one day coming out of the mess hall, I was walking by, and this general was walking out about the same time with me. We started talking, told him what I did, what section I was in, and he looked at me and said, "You're traveling with all those Hollywood people, you're meeting all those stars." He says, "I'd like to trade jobs with you." I said, "You gotta be kidding." I said, first of all, I'd make a lousy general. I said, but I wouldn't trade this for anything. He says, you got a better job than I got.
That's the dream job. You had a dream job.
It was.
Do you have any favorite moments that you can remember that you had in the service?
In the service? Well, I think, as I told you, the fact that I was able to associate with all of these famous Hollywood people was a very big part of my wartime activity. Well, it was a very important part of my life at the time. Coming home was even bigger.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. You know, after a long deployment, coming home.
You know, it's interesting. As much as I loved my wife and knew her for so many years, I had an interesting experience walking down the gangplank, and they had a large pen there, like when they had the relatives in. of the soldiers coming home. And I was sure my mother and father and my wife were in the pen, and I'm walking down the gangplank, and I'm looking around. I don't see anyone that looks like my wife. Got down to the bottom of the gangplank, and this lady says to me, "What's the matter? You don't recognize me?" I looked at her and said, "No, I don't recognize you." She never let me forget that.
How did you feel when the war ended?
Very happy. Actually, I have to admit that I felt badly about the fact that I got married and then left a bride and was gone that long and didn't see her. And the only communication we had, well, I will say, we started a program of telephone calls from Italy to the United States so that the soldiers could call their families. And so the biggest kick I got in all the time I was over there was the first time I could get on a phone and talk to her from Italy. And she was in Louisiana.
Yeah, that's a long, at that time period.
So I can't say that I didn't talk to her at all, but it was a long time. It was probably 2 years or more. I'll say the biggest thing that bothered me while I was overseas was I was fortunate that I wasn't in a situation where I was in combat, so I wasn't concerned that I might get killed or might not survive. But it was just the fact of being away from home and not being able to see my family and not being able to start a life that we had looked forward to. That was the thing that bothered me more than anything else. These 50 Hollywood stars, and they'd come up to the table and visit.
Under one roof.
Under one roof. So I would say that my service made for some interesting experiences. But it was a great experience, and of course then I came back, went to work, and eventually ended up as a brokerage manager for a life insurance company, and they transferred me to Phoenix from Connecticut to Phoenix, Arizona. That was in 1961. So my kids really grew up in Phoenix, and we loved Phoenix. It was a great town. We were there for almost 50 years. And then when my wife passed away, by that time my two boys who had come to LSU also, in fact both of my boys played baseball for LSU. And they met their wives here, and they decided to stay in Arizona, in Louisiana. So my one son is in Shreveport, the other son is here with his family in Baton Rouge. So when my wife passed away, I decided, why should I stay in Arizona by myself when I have some kids here that I could be near? So that precipitated my moving back to Phoenix, back to Baton Rouge. And of course, I wanted to be close to LSU. I have a feeling for LSU that is just immense.
Yeah, we all are Tigers.
Oh yeah, I used to suffer with them in Arizona, watching them play games and lose, and it would tear me up.
Well, now you're home, so when we lose, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
We can go get some comfort food.
But it was interesting. When I first came here, for about the first 4 or 5 years, I worked out at ASU in the Alumni Center, as a volunteer, and that was kind of fun. But by and large, I look back on my life, and I really, if I had to,
You met the movie stars.
yeah, I would not change a thing. I don't know of anything that I say I would want to do differently. And when we were, after our kids started growing up and leaving home and whatnot, we decided we'd like to travel, so we became travelers.